Hi, and welcome to today's video where I will be doing an idol dance ranking of the Loona members. Before we get started, I want to explain why I'm going to be formatting this dance ranking differently from all other group analysis videos I've made so far. Loona is a perfect example of why I have to differentiate between idol groups for whom I can evaluate style as a component of artistry, and those who prioritize synchronization above all else. Their unique shortened way of moving means that all of the members dance even more similarly than in a group like 17. Furthermore, Loona has a lot of members with similarly poor technique, and that makes it difficult for me to bring up any interesting points in a member-by-member analysis. For this reason, I'm going to be going over multiple members at once if they are at a similar skill level. Neither Yeo Jin nor Haseul have very good musicality, but Vivi is constantly off time. She's always either ahead or behind the other members, and it can get quite distracting when watching her individually. Yeo Jin, Vivi, and Haseul are all equally lacking in the facial expressions department. Yeo Jin actually shows quite a lot of potential in power projection. She seems to have strong and compact legs. The thing that makes me put her lower than Vivi in terms of technique is her surprisingly bad isolations. I don't know if I've seen another idol who struggles as much on this point as Yeo Jin. Vivi's technique is also very underdeveloped, but she's more even. One thing I want to mention is that Vivi is knock-kneed, meaning that her knees face in and touch even when her ankles are apart. This causes a lot of instability in her legs, and I worry that she could end up with an injury if she repeats the same steps over and over without correcting this misalignment. There's a limit to how much unhealthy movement a body can take. There's not that much content to look at in Haseul's case, but I'd classify her as a non-dancer like Hyunjin from Yves 1. She's really stiff, and there's nothing to point out in regards to her technique. Even Yeo Jin, who is a weak dancer, shows more potential in Loona's choreography. Mostly due to a lack of muscle engagement, Hyunjin has a tendency to just float through the counts, making her timing unclear. Hyunjin is honestly one of the least expressive idols I've ever seen. She sometimes does look like she's having fun on stage, but that's not enough as a performer. You have to keep a consistent character. Looking bored on stage is something you want to avoid at all costs as an idol. Since many idols have poor technique, facial expressions are often the audience's only way to feel energy from the person on stage. The best way I can describe Hyunjin's dancing is that it looks like she mimics the outward appearance of the steps without actually using her muscles. She has noticeably long arms, and they could be used to create nice angles and shapes. At the moment, they are mostly just distracting because of how loose they are. Her connection through her torso is really poor, and that causes some coordination problems, especially during more dynamic movement. Hyunjin doesn't really have any problems with excessive movement. If she improves her muscle engagement, she could become a very clean dancer. Jin Soul's musicality is pretty unsurprising for someone of her technical level. She's not terrible, but her timing often becomes unclear. As with her musicality, I think Jin Soul will be able to improve her facial expressions and become a better performer once she's more secure in her technique. Jin Soul actually shows the beginnings of good connected movement in her torso. However, her fluidity and coordination is limited to the center of her body. Her shape doesn't extend to her limbs. Basically, if Loona's choreography was just standing body rolls, she would do fine. I'm actually kind of curious to find out how she would dance in heels. None of them have great musicality, but I don't see any major timing issues either. In terms of performance quality, I see Choo, Chori, and Gaon as being mostly equal. All three have underdeveloped technique, so they don't have the brain room to be thinking about how to portray a character. When it comes to Gaon, the only difference is that her face tends to go completely blank in darker concepts. Out of all of the dancers in Loona, these three were the most difficult for me to place, and I see them as interchangeable. Gaon is a fairly precise dancer. While her body control is practically non-existent, she usually picks up on details. I was really surprised to see that Choo has no issues with extended movements. She's also the type of dancer who can make herself look better than others with a similar level of technique through energy alone. She struggles to show controlled body positions more than Gaon. Chori does have slightly better body control than both Choo and Gaon. But I gave her a lower score because of her weird coordination and significant alignment issues. Olivia is somewhat of a slow mover. Coupled with lackluster precision, her musicality can be very underwhelming at times. Olivia is a naturally charismatic performer, but I want to see more variation from her facial expressions. Olivia is the first person on this list without significant coordination issues, but she seems to have some trouble keeping her balance, especially during turns. The first thing that sticks out to me is how weighted her dancing appears, and I think that mostly comes from an inability to regulate her energy throughout a performance. A great comparison is Jennie from Blackpink. Olivia tends to put too much force into her movements and frequently misses isolations or details. She's also stiff through her torso. To be honest, the degree of heaviness and inconsistency I see in her dancing almost makes me wonder if she has some health problems or injuries I don't know about. Kim Lip has a good sense of rhythm, but she also has very flowy musicality. This means that she often moves slightly before she actually should. Kim Lip is a bit inconsistent, but she has good facial expressions overall. Kim Lip has relatively decent isolations compared to everyone else on this list so far. Although she hasn't trained them properly, she's able to add pops to the choreography. Her main issue is that her leg work just completely disappears most of the time. She's also one of the weakest in the group at fast or power-focused sections of choreography. Yves has okay musicality, but I sometimes can't tell what part of the music she's supposed to be moving with. Yves is fairly consistent, but most of her facial expressions look really random and awkward to me. There's no connection to the choreography, music, or her character. She just does a squint and half smile and calls it a day. Yves is a relatively clean dancer without any major issues with excessive or uncoordinated movement. Her biggest strength is her footwork. Basically all of Yves' technical issues come down to one thing, which is that she's incredibly stiff. This interferes with her isolations and leads her to shortcut certain movements. I'm also guessing that her angles get pulled out of position because of the amount of tension she keeps in her body. Yves has very underwhelming dynamics. When you're so stiff, it's difficult to project power because power comes from controlling thrown movements. It's explosive. You have to fire and relax your muscles really quickly. Try to clench your arm muscles and throw it at the same time. It's impossible, right? As a result, all of Yves' dancing ends up looking the same quality-wise. I think some of this could be solved with more hip-hop training. Yves has always been pretty weak in that style, and forcing her body to get used to groove could make her muscles loosen up. Hyunjin is very precise with her timing. Hyunjin has good facial expressions, and she sometimes surprises me with how genuine her performance is. I want her to try being a bit more dramatic on stage. Hyunjin is the only idol I've seen who has improved drastically since debut. I don't think these results came directly from her dance technique, but instead from her focus on general strength and fitness. I've explained in other videos that proper alignment and consistent muscle engagement are vital to female idol dancing technique. Like Momo, Hyunjin has become really solid in this. In fact, her awareness of muscle use is even better than Momo because she has no issues with excess tension causing her to miss details or lack fluidity. Her movements used to be very loose, and she couldn't stick positions. This weakness was most obvious when compared to Yves in jopping. However, since gaining muscle, her arm control has completely transformed. She's able to be impactful and sharp without being too forceful. Hyunjin has perfect torso control, and I don't think I can say that about any other female idol except for Yeo Jin. Her waves and isolations are completely honed. Hyunjin has become a noticeably clean dancer, and her angles are consistent and well extended. The only correction I have for her is to work on her footwork. Hyunjin has a natural sense of groove, so it shouldn't be that difficult for her to fix if she decides to focus on it. Other than that, it's just about incorporating more technical elements into her dancing, expanding on her sense of groove, learning how to pop, etc., in order to diversify her dynamics.